Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again for another amazing conversation led by Dr. Gloria Chance. Of course, we always talk about the importance of physical health, but we're tackling the value and importance of taking care of our mental health as well. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Chance as we bring up a dope lineup of panelists today. Dr. Chance, good to see you again.
Hello, Troy, and good to see you again. And Troy, we're excited because you're going to be a part of the panel today. And welcome everyone to the Mental Health and the Black Artists Creating Through Trauma Part 3. And this is an event that's been created in partnership with Creative Cypher in association with Troy Pryor himself, Max Black Media, African American Art Alliance, and the Gary International Black Film Festival. And so as we have launched these conversations, we have a series, or we've had a series of 3. And as you know, it's difficult for all of us right now with everything going on in the world to process everything with trauma. And in this series, we're defining trauma as a deep emotional wound. As we know, as African Americans and Black Americans, that we have these wounds from 300-400 years, and really even from even longer than that. And so we're here to talk about how do we get through our day-to-day, particularly as a performer, to get through our trauma. And we also know that we all have to perform anyway, whatever job that we have. And so we're hoping that this conversation will be beneficial to everyone who's listening. So in the first series, we uncovered trauma at an individual level. In the second series, we talked about how art and trauma impacts our community. And tonight, we're going to talk about how art and trauma impacts more of the business side of being an artist. And we're hoping that these conversations provide insight and wisdom to everyone who's listening, and that you'll apply the techniques and the things that we talk about. So stay tuned as we expand the conversation after we wrap today. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring up our esteemed panelists. And so we already have Troy. Troy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your art.
Yeah, I'm a filmmaker from Chicago. Happy to be a part of several organizations empowering Black and Brown creatives, looking for ways to position us so we own our own narrative, own our IP, and can build businesses based off of our creativity.
Love it. And you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much. And thank you for putting this together and sponsoring. Next up, we're going to bring up NK. NK? Hi there. So let's hear about what do you do in the industry?
I'm an actor, filmmaker, body activist, and like Troy, involved in several different organizations and leadership positions, working to leverage my seat at the table to elevate Black and Brown voices, to create spaces where we feel seen, heard, and valued. Within that space, I also have an athleisure line, Athletic, and we work to elevate the conversation around wellness and inclusivity by cultivating conversation, clothing, and community.
Wow, you're seriously a boss. Love it. Welcome. Next up, we have John, the author. Hey, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I had to go get my Xbox headset.
We love the creativity. Thank you. So, John, tell us about yourself. What do you do?
In the industry, I'm a rapper, I'm a poet, I'm an activist, and I'm an entrepreneur. I met Troy over 5 years ago when I was just a 20, maybe 23 or 24-year-old man child seeking mentorship, and Troy has been a big brother to me in many ways over the years, and I'm happy to be here with you guys this evening.
And I love you acknowledging the man-child part, because obviously you said you were, which means that you're a full-grown man now. So that is amazing. Thank you very much. And then last but not least, we have Charles. Charles, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Charles. So tell us what you do in the industry.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a actor, I'm a filmmaker, I'm the president of SAG-AFTRA here in Chicago, and I'm also an educator, professor at a couple of different places, DePaul, Western Michigan University, teach a lot of acting. So
Wow. So, we all have a lot of hats that we're wearing and a lot of jobs. And, that might be a part also. I want to ask you guys as we're getting started, is that a part of the trauma? Like, why are you doing so many things? Troy, why would you say with all the things? Because I know I also was an entrepreneur, as a psychologist, and I was a technologist, and and it's like I have to weave all those things together, and that really creates a holistic me. But Troy, why do you do so many things? Because sometimes that is about trauma. Like we stay busy. Part of trauma is staying busy so that you don't have time to deal with yourself. Why do you do so many things?
Man, I'm with Charles. That's some deep question, man. Deep question.
Well, we're talking about mental health, and it's really deep. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth to sometimes we joke and say, man, you can't sit still. You can't sit still, but there's some truth to that. It has been and at times is a challenge for me to relax, to sit still, to take in the moment. I think for me, a lot of that stems from early childhood, being involved in multiple sports and extracurricular activities, sort of growing this, like there's a gift and a curse to it, right? It's good to be versatile, but there has to be.
That's okay.
It's good. It's good to be Hey, I'm telling you, gotta get ready to juggle a lot of things.
Exactly.
It's good to be versatile, but I think that the goal to win, go from one sport to the next sport to the next sport, has just stayed with me throughout my entire life, and so just I think that that's one of the things that has always been a tug of war for me. Like, what is ambition versus ego? I think that's been one of the challenges for me.
That's a really good point. And also, I think for many people of color, particularly Black people, also we're always looking at, well, we feel like we have to do more and have so much to just be equal, right? In the system. Just to have an opportunity to get a chance. Anybody else want to jump in on why are we so busy? Why are you doing 100 things? Why do you have 100 jobs, Nikki? I'm sorry.
Oh no! First of all, yeah, that question was confronting as hell. I was like, oh, I went to my therapist for years, but then Dr. Gloria actually go there.
Sorry.
She said, boop. I was like, oh.
I know, we just jumped right in on the deep end.
Clutching my pearls. Right though, because it's the truth, and I'd like to expand on what Troy said. In the busyness starting at childhood, take it a step further. For many of us that are Black and brown as achievers, our parents put us in a million things so that we would be safe and off the streets. So yes. I know for my mom, I was involved in everything always. I started dancing when I was 2.5, and it just went from there. There was no organization that I was not a part of. I was just always in something. And it wasn't until I was older that my mom said, I need somebody to take care of you and make sure that you were okay. So I kept you busy, and keep you busy kept you out of trouble. So that is part, especially coming from a single parent family, which many Black and brown people do, unfortunately, that's kind of like embedded into our way of being. And I noticed that in the spaces that I sit in amongst where I'm always one of the first, the only, the different, where I see someone who looks like me, we usually are involved in a million things and have, we may not have had the exact same upbringing, but we can find a lot of similarities.
That's very true. And I want to say that, and I really want you all in the audience also to really inspect your busyness, because it is important to pause. And I know things like meditation it's not easy for the Black community specifically, but meditation is a great way to slow down your mind, kind of, just kind of get balanced. etc. And it really is a healthy thing to do, because being too busy, you don't notice, like you might not notice pain. You might not notice things that
Yeah.
creep up on you, like illnesses. And next thing you know, you're kind of out and you're like, what just happened to me? Anyone else want to jump in on that question? John, it looks like you're.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I was growing up, I remember my mom would always say, an idle mind is a playground for the devil. And so she would always keep us, like Nikki said, piggybacking off of her, keep us busy, keep us in after school programs, doing extracurricular activities, and it kept us out of the streets. I think, speaking specifically to the entertainment industry, we end up wearing so many hats because oftentimes it takes so many different hats to get certain tasks done, and we may not necessarily have relationships with the professionals qualified to do the things that we need them to do. So we have to pick that hat up and wear it on our own. And in many ways, for me, you know, speaking for myself, it's been healthy, but it's also been harmful because I've been in a position where I've spread myself too thin before, where I was burnt out, where I was exhausted. So I think it's good to know when you have to do something on your own and pick that head up and wear it. But there's also a saying that if you wanna go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you wanna go far, go with others. So part of my growth is realizing that I don't have to wear every hat, and I lean more nowadays into building relationships, you know, which is the most valuable. It's more valuable than money. A good relationship.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that is so, you're right. That is so, so profound. And also, John, I want to say that, and I'm curious with the rest of the panel. Charles, I'll go to you. What do you do? Because you're busy too. What do you do to become unbusy? Do you have anything that you do? Are you even aware of that you need to be doing something? Just, give me a quick, like, everyone think of one or two words, like what do you do, like Troy, like if you work out or what, but what is it that you do? And working out actually is being busy too. Is there something that you do where you can really just unwind and just get your mind settled?
Yeah, I had to come up with something. I'm a habitual do too mucher, like all of us. I got way too much on my plate, and to throw a little bit more sauce on there, I think on the first question before I move on to the second one, I think it's just like that necessity piece. As an artist, like we have to cobble. We feel like we have to, right? Cobble together a whole bunch of things, and I think that like your comments on just like keeping an eye on everything is so important, right? Because it's a fine line between scarcity mindset, cobbling things together, and like let's make this thing thrive, cobbling things together. And a lot of us, our statements, it's like let me do a little bit over here so that way if this falls apart, I'll be good.
Yes, it's like having the backup of the backup of the backup.
Yeah. And so I think that as long as we can have that balance of realizing like I'm doing this to build to the next thing, as opposed to I'm doing this to hold on to what I have. I think that having that balance point is important. And like you're saying, that balance point of slowing down. I meditate every morning, at least 20 minutes. And that just gives me the ability to like take care of my mental health and like notice how my mental health is doing, notice how my emotional health is doing, notice how my focus is for that morning. And then with that awareness, I can then go through the day and in these business settings, really just like be mindful of my own thoughts and be mindful of my own trauma responses, be mindful of like when I am knee-jerk reacting.
And going off on people. See, that's a trigger. And oftentimes in our community, we get triggered, really rightfully so, but it's up to us to manage it. Like we cannot allow the system and all this stuff going on to trigger us, because we're one individual that's just trying to make it through the world. And if we let the things going on in the world trigger us, then we're going to be telling people off all day, every second, and breaking down. And so I love what you said, Charles, is being mindful about what state of mind you're in, especially if you're doing business, because that can really, really impact you. So I want to go ahead and move on to the question, which is an even deeper question. I mean, knowing that, given what just happened this past weekend around the Buffalo shootings, and there were a couple of others that happened, we all know that that introduces more trauma, more wounds to our community, more grief on top of grief on top of grief. And so, speaking of that and how you move through and doing your business every day, how has that event impacted you specifically, and how does it impact you and how you move in your world in terms of getting business done?
Mm.
Troy.
Throw throw me out there first. Rose.
Exactly, Troy.
It's it's scary in my situation. I know, like being a new dad with having a new one on the way. Just thinking of the world. There's a scripture that says, cry when a baby's born. The idea of you're bringing a child into the
This.
chaos is bothersome to me, but it is also the reality. So we have to see things as they are and not just as we want them to be. As far as media entertainment business go, I should say media. Uh, I think about what's going on in that person's mind to justify taking those types of actions. 18-year-old is not just out of nowhere. There's something that's indoctrinated in this individual. And I think about, like, what are they consuming? What messages are they consuming? And when I think about my own career, whether it's that specific situation or whether that is a something to get me thinking about what I'm creating. What am I? What message am I telling the world? What impact is my message having on individuals, positive or negative? I was just having a conversation with someone a couple days before that, and it wasn't to get into politics. It was just about understanding the importance of who has the mic in their hand, the importance of leadership, not just being, your president is not just someone who can run a company. You need somebody with the moral compass. It's not just about being smart. There's a level of wisdom that we need to have. And I feel as though individuals in media have to understand that, because yes, we have to be true to ourselves and our art, but it's important to understand that that's just, in my opinion, an intelligent way of looking at it. That's just black and white. We're all human beings. And I think there's a level of wisdom we have to have when we are creating and putting things out in the world, because it has a real impact on the lives of others and actions that people take. So those are some of the things that I think of, as it relates to my profession as a creator, aside from my personal opinions on the actions themselves.
And that's so true, because John, you work in the rap. You talk about your rap music being more positive, etc. Can you speak to a little bit of what Troy's talking about? Because in our community, as much as other communities are coming in and hunting us down during the day, etc., which is unbelievable and unthinkable from a humanity standpoint. But part of in our community, we sort of, to Troy's point, in the rap music, we are one of the only people who denigrate each other through our music. So talk about your music and why it's so important, and why you have the approach that you have
Yeah.
that you do music.
I laughed inside when you said positive, because I don't know how positive I am. But I would say I'm honest, right? I think we all have good sides and not so good sides about ourselves. But I think as an artist, and it's not even just with music. It's with being an actor like Charles, or being whatever you're doing. You have to make a conscious decision on whether or not your art is going to imitate life, or if your art is going to inspire life. One of the things that frustrates me with my culture, with my community, with my art form, and those who practice it with me is the excuse that's been being used for years, as far as rappers saying that we're just, reporting what goes on in our neighborhood. I think that
Mhm.
as artists, we're leaders. As artists, we have uh, sort of a responsibility to do more than just report. We can set new standards through our gift. So what I do with my art is I set the new standard of what not just what my community is today, but what my community could be tomorrow. So when I talk about me being an adult contemporary rapper, the key word in that is adult. I'm 32 years old now. I'm a grown man now. I think um, one of the big things with across entertainment is grown people trying to relate to young people. Grown people trying to grow backwards, and that doesn't that it should be young people looking at grown people and saying, yo, I wish, I hope that I can be like him when I get older, because that's what's going to happen to everyone. And I think that that starts with artists like me, and everyone on this panel just accepting that responsibility. And as we create in that from that position. I'm not trying to relate to an 18-year-old. I'm just not. 18-year-olds should be trying to relate to me because I've done really well in my life, and I can probably show you a few things if you're willing to listen.
And so, John, you bring up a really good point that we won't have time to discuss, but part of being mentally healthy is, you have to have some grounding and foundation that's grounded in reality and history. And we do have a sort of mashup with about 5 generations living, and most of the generations are all going in different directions. And
Mhm.
so that is actually an opportunity and an issue, I believe, in our communities. So, Charles, around the Buffalo shooting, et cetera, and being a Black man and the trauma that has caused in general with shootings, et cetera, how do you process all of this stuff and move through your world?
Yeah, me for personally processing it is just that self-reflective time of like being able to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, right? Like, my mental health, my emotional health, because these conversations are gonna come up.
Right.
And as leaders, as thought leaders, as Black male leaders, as Black leaders in general, we have to be able, and ready to help people to breathe through it, because it's frustrating as all, I don't want to, use language, but like it's frustrating, y'all. It's frustrating to be in this space continually. Public
Right.
eye is constantly on us, and if I'm remembering correctly, my man had on a body cam, like
Right.
recorded himself. Like
Right.
that
They
is
went live. Hmm.
that it's just too much. It's too much for anybody to handle, for this world to handle, especially amidst the national global pandemic that we're still currently in. Like, it's just like, let us all as a society take a break. Let's like all just like chill out, right? And so for us to be able to, be in a space to help other people do that, I think that, that's for me, it's one of the most important things as a leader and as an artist. Like John was saying, like we have the opportunity to imitate life or to inspire life, and personally, as an artist, my goal is to shift people's perspective if possible. And so to be able to do that, I have to be grounded. I have to be centered in myself to say, okay, this is frustrating and I want to respond in anger. I want to respond, and let my frustration out. But and maybe this is even a trauma response in itself, and the plight of Black Americans, right? Of just like, we're since the beginning of our time here, we've been forced to, turn the other cheek and still find progress.
And still keep going in spite of the hurt, the pain, the trauma. And that is, and I've mentioned on the other series, that it's part of why we have comorbidities, why we have high blood pressure more than anyone else, and diabetes and those things, because carrying the weight of that trauma, never being able to rest, always being busy, does impact your body. It impacts your organs. It impacts your hormonal levels. And so it is very serious. And many of us don't even understand those connections. And so, Nikki, you speak about your work and how, and I want to keep calling you Nikki, so I'm so sorry, NK. I'm giving you a nickname. So one of the things that you talk about in your work is wanting to have people being heard and seen. And so when you think about things, happenings that cause more trauma, like the Buffalo shooting, how do you use your art? How do people get seen and heard in that way? How would you approach that?
How do let me repeat this question to make sure I'm clear on what you're asking.
So in general, I'm really speaking to the deep trauma we have. And your work, you mentioned that you want to have people being seen and heard. And, you know, John made a point about his work isn't, or his rap isn't always positive, because, you know, life isn't always positive, but it's important to be real. So when you think about and you compare and contrast just the trauma around the types of shootings that we're going through, how does your work help that? How do you think about your work helping people being heard and seen? What's the connection there for you as an artist?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you for reframing it a little for me. For me, I really focus on covert racism and the microaggressions, because things like this is what's making the news. But the things that are really causing the comorbidities, the things that are really happening to us constantly, we're being inundated and having to live in a way in which we are constantly doing more, working more, hearing things, the level of ignorance, and just ways of being, systems that are set up for us to perform in a certain way or deal with things in a certain way or allow things to be so. Those are the things that I really focus on and work to dismantle, especially in any spaces that I hold power. And Troy will tell you, I'll be the person like, hold on.
I have that feeling.
Yeah. And what when I recently got really clear on was able to put language around it, because I'm Afro-Latina, and my mom's a white-facing Mexican woman. And I went to a private Irish Catholic grade school, middle school. So most of my life, I was definitely the only. And what I really got clear on, and it was just actually in a meeting that I was in with Troy, and it was just something that I didn't say this to him, but I got clear on how I'm able to communicate things in a way where you are like, where we're calling out the thing without making the person who might be participating in it the enemy or bad or wrong. And in doing that, because here's the thing, like, and I'm seeing, and I'm really proud of some of the spaces that I'm working in where people are really getting present to, like, we really need to change that, and seeing them take action around it, and us not be the ones who have to point it out, and then being like, hey, but you can still feel the shame that they have on them when they have to say the thing out loud. And I don't allow myself to take the burden on for myself, but to call out we're all colonized. We've all been participating in the system in one way or the other for different reasons, but we've all been participating. So I acknowledge you for calling the thing. Now, thank you for allowing space for us to now do things differently.
NK, that's beautiful. We can all learn from that, because that is actually managing your triggers, right? Because attacking each other obviously is not going to get us anywhere. It's just going to create more trauma, more issues, more trauma you have to deal with to overcome the issues that you created. You didn't really create them, they were created for you, but it's a vicious cycle and circle. Speaking of systems, so let's talk about the business of being a creative. Now, being an entrepreneur, whether you're a creative or any other kind of entrepreneur, is stressful within itself, right? Because you are trying to do many things and many tasks, etc. And the stress of just trying to meet deadlines, getting funding, etc. So, if you had to say one thing that is the most stressful for you in the creative industry around the business of being a creative, what would that be, Charles?
Expectation management is stressful as all get out. As an actor, I'm constantly auditioning. I'm constantly putting my art out and like at a very high level, right? Of like, I give everything to my art, every single audition. And the reality of that, of the world of being a professional actor is that about 70% of those auditions are going to come back as no's. And so just the stress of time, energy, effort, being all in on your passion, your purpose, and it being out of your control, whether or not you are rewarded for the amount, like it's not what is it called, meritocracy, right, where you're being
Right. Yeah.
rewarded by merit, by the amount
Right,
of
by performance, right? You paid by performance, right? That doesn't happen. Right.
not that, and that's a little bit stressful. um but I would probably say the thing that's the most stressful for me is no, that's probably it. I'll
Yeah. And,
um,
and so and so what do? You just sort of meditate and that's how you kind of get through
I've
that
released the
particular.
entitlement.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I've released the entitlement of or the expectation, and I've fallen in love with the pursuit of expertise, and like the fact that like me auditioning, that's me actually getting a chance to act,
Mm.
and so like in my I'm an educator, and so I'm telling all of these young actors, they're just like, your job is to audition. If you get the job, fantastic, that's great, but like, why not celebrate the process? Why not celebrate the fact that somebody along the way said, yeah, let's give this guy a shot, let's give this gal a
I
shot, let's
love
give
that.
a shot.
I love that because you're talking about a growth mindset. Most of us live in a fixed mindset, which is negative. It basically says, I'm staying in a state of fear and a state of, I'm not going to move. This is how it is. This is how it's never going to change. And what you're saying, Charles, which I love, is have a growth mindset, which is I'm in a learning mode and I'm in a growth mode. And that keeps you positive. So that's a really, really great point. John, what about you? What, as an entrepreneur in the business side, when you, what's the biggest thing that you struggle with when you're either trying to get business or you're building the business? What's your
Mm.
biggest challenge?
I think I want to steal Charles's answer because, and I want to
If you got to
expand.
steal it, man, I give it to you.
I want to expand on it as well because expectation management is a real thing. When
Hmm.
when you look back, and when I say back, I mean like back. I'm talking about before televisions existed, before radios existed, before newspapers existed, before social media existed, before you can like look at a device and say, "Yo, I want to be like that person." Who was the celebrity? Who were the popular people in tribes? Who were the popular people in villages? It was the priest, right? It was the it was the old lady who was
The
like,
elders.
yeah, the elders, because they just were so valuable to that community. And I think nowadays we live in this society, this of mass culture, right? Where you have millions upon millions of people trying to live under one law, and we're all trying to look at something and say that's what I want to be, but it's not realistic. And for me, being an artist, I have to manage my expectations and go back to the core of what is it that what is it that God really gave me this gift for? Was it to be on BET? Was it to be on MTV? Was it to be on the radio? Or was it to provide a service to my village, to my people, you know what I
Yes.
mean, to my community? And
Yes.
do I need what, the average, what this mass culture says that I need to be successful, or do I need to remember what this gift that I have is truly supposed to be used for?
Now,
And
I have to say, Charles, he really added to your answer. That's amazing. I mean,
because
that's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you, John.
you
So,
get what I'm trying to say, though.
no, I totally do because it's
Yeah.
making me expand on the question. And I want to ask NK, when you think about, the same question about, what's your one stressor as an entrepreneur that you're managing? But John brings up a point, because when you add in the newer generations and sort of the influx now of, IG and all YouTube and all of these other things. So everyone is a star, and there's nothing wrong with that, because we should all see ourselves as stars. But it does start to impede a little bit on somewhat, or do you think it does, NK, the work that you guys are doing professionally, and you're working hard and challenging? So number one, what's your stressor? But to add to John's point, how do these new media types impact that stress? And the same question to you after that, Troy. Or you can jump in.
For me as a creator, it's capital. It's always, and just as a human, like having the finances to do what I am here to do with ease and not have to think about it, so that I can ideate and move the way I want to and hire the people I want to and create the things I want to. That, and that is something I'm really working on, even my language around it. So I was like, how do I even say this? Because I'm really, your words create your world. So
Yes.
Historically, that's for me always, like, there's so, like, when you have your overhead covered at minimum, but when you're living in the space of abundance and finances are not an issue, then there's just so much more that we can do. And there's so much more that I can do and I can offer to my community when I'm not worried about that.
I just want to add, because your mind's not ruminating. So ruminating means that even while you're doing whatever you're doing, in the back of your mind, you're worried. In the back of your mind, you're stressed out. And that's really difficult and creates even more trauma. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the impact, right? That's the impact on your mental and physical health. And it shows up, I know it's shown for me somatically, in my body, how I'm able to stand in the world and create with other people. Like, all of that is impacted when you're ruminating, because that energy is being used that you're so accustomed to ruminating that you don't even realize.
Right.
And it's been in places of influx that I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just better when coins aren't coiny. It's better.
Yeah, but now, to that point though, does the whole kind of new entree of the IG and the YouTube and all of that as other vehicles for other people to come onto the platform, does that cause or present any stress or challenges for you?
It doesn't for me. I mean, if anything, if I don't really allow myself to get into that rabbit hole of comparison, because for me, that's what it falls into, that line. And me and an IG, whatever, we ain't doing the same thing. And what I'm here to do is my gifts, you ain't got, like, you can't do me like I do me. So no matter how many followers or IG, whatever you're doing. So I'm super clear on that. There are moments you're like, damn, again, going back to the coins, like, oh, have a little sponsor, do a little something.
Right.
That would be like the biggest part of that. But no, that is just not something I really, because again, there's like, because in an abundance mindset, there's enough for everybody. So whatever they're doing, that's not going to impact what I'm doing. What I will say is that what becomes dangerous when people in place of power, when they allow that to be the only creative voice, and allow how many followers you have lead.
Yes.
I'm to a conversation with I've never really been into IMDb. That's not my jam either. And I didn't know until last week how the star meter even worked. That's 100%. Like, I had no idea. But talking about IMDb Pro, and we were having a conversation, my friend, like, how, and one of the organizations in New York, like, that's one of the things they look at, where your star meter is and all that. And I'm just like, that to me was just gross. And I was just yeah, to me that's the equivalent of,
it's too much. It's too much to track. Right.
And so that is where I see an impact. I was like, because if that's the only thing you're looking at, to me, that's the idea of a standardized test being the only thing you are judging somebody by to allow them into university. It's just we go back to white supremacy and a very ignorant, narrow-minded idea of what creativity is, or what success is, or what ability and talent is.
Well, even how to measure it, because then the measuring stick keeps moving and changing and jumping around, and you're not really sure which one to do. So, Troy, what do you say about all of this? I mean, how do you wrap up this this particular question about, you know, what stresses you out as an entrepreneur and any other points that others made?
Yeah, well, picking up right where NK left off, there's a very tangible element to impressions online, social media following that has an impact on closing a business deal, as we all know. And I remember, well, this was a couple of years ago, but I remember going into an audition for a commercial, and I was actually asked about how many followers I had. And this was, you know, it was in earlier stages, and it was a light bulb that went off. And, you know, you think about the time you've spent in classes or in workshop and projects that you worked on, honing your craft and your skill and your ability to go into an audition and be asked that question. It's like, wait a minute, you know what? It really doesn't matter what I do in this room right now, because you're looking for analytics, you know. Exactly. And to NK's point, and to your point, Dr. Chance, the systems continue to change and they're in a flux. You know, are you at the top of someone's thread? You know, how do you, sometimes those algorithms, it becomes a whole other world that determines your visibility and your reach, which can have a specific and dramatic impact on closing a business deal, you know? And so I know John, being a musician, has seen this so much, and we've heard it a lot when we think about musicians that are either independent or signed to a label. And all we talk about when we say that is sometimes individuals have machines behind them that push their art and give them visibility. You turn on the radio and you're like, man, every time I turn the radio on, I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. Yeah. But you follow the money and you're like, oh, that radio station is owned by this corporation. That corporation is owned by this corporation, and they own all of them. So you start to look at it and you say, wait a minute, it's not that this person's art is more
any better or any more creative, right?
They have those machines behind them. They have those numbers, those analytics behind those, and so that becomes a level of frustration. And this is the first part of that. One of the things that frustrates me, one of my biggest stressors, is the idea of the gatekeeper. You know, I think Charles and I had this conversation years ago talking to I forgot the writer's name, John Ridley, and it was about asking for permission. It's like this idea of constantly having to prove ourselves. When we look over here, we have a counterpart that may not look like us, that just gets the grant, just gets the funding, and you're like, they get so many opportunities at times to drop the ball. Well, we got to get it right, you know, their first time. And so ensuring that we can get through or not have to rely on someone being a gatekeeper saying, okay, we're going to give you this shot. We're going to give them 10 shots to do that. Not needing to be in a position to even ask for permission is one of the things that we're striving for.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the power that we have, and the power that I think we need to collectively work on together. Because obviously, you know, one of the things we talk a lot about at Max Black Media, and we'll be talking about more as we launch, is this concept of the flow of money. And that, you know, we need to be the owners of the money. We need to have money so that we're able to make the calls. And as you know, many of the Black media companies no longer exist. And so part of that is, you know, we've got to be a part of creating the system, creating a system that works for us as well. And I can't believe that we're actually getting close to maybe having one more question, and then we got to wrap. But I'm curious, so even with all of the challenges, opportunities, the trauma, the stress, and having to manage yourself and other people that you hire, et cetera, why do you do this? What do you believe what you do Is that your passion? And what's your purpose? NK.
I do it because I know that's what I was called to do. I know that's why God put me here. I am a creator, and I am here to create space for others to freely create. And I adore what I do. I love everything I do. I don't lend my energy or time to anything I do not love. And I never really have. And I've created a life where I'm able to do that. And I stand in that purpose. When it's hard, when it's scary, I step out on faith and I stand in the purpose that God called me to stand in.
Wow. And she says that so positively and amazing. And again, I want everyone to understand that creativity is the highest human potential. And so when we lean into that, John, you talk about you don't run away from creativity, you run towards it. And that's very positive because it actually does save lives. You know, when I grew up in Brooklyn, and one of the worst parts of Brooklyn, that's what saved me, was being able to be in the School of Performing Arts, where I could really focus and just lose myself and almost at times lose my mind in a positive way in the art. So John, when you talk about your purpose and passion and running towards creativity, why do you do what you do? You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
When I was a little boy, I want to say maybe at least 10 years old, I had a dream. I was at home and I was watching television, and music videos were coming on, and I saw guys jumping around on screen, and I said, I want to do that. It became a dream of mine. And ever since 10 years old, I've pursued that dream. Um, and that's okay. I think just because you want to do one thing doesn't mean you can't do anything else. It doesn't mean that that has to be all you do. I'm a rapper. I'm a really good rapper, but I'm not just a rapper. And I don't think just because I'm really good at rapping that that has to be my only source of income, or that has to be my only revenue stream. I have a verse where I have a line where I say, every dream should be adjusted as you grow from adolescence to fit our newfound perspectives to ensure they don't die. So just think about being 10 years old and saying, hey, I want to be a cowboy when I grow up, or I want to be a cowgirl when I grow up. And now here you are, or here I am, 30 years old, trying to be a cowboy, right? It's like, or I want to, or want to be a superhero. Like, that childish dream sounds preposterous, right? But you have to adjust it. You have to make it fit reality. That's one thing that children don't do. So I do what I do now because I do have a genuine passion for it. But with my adult mind, I make it realistic. I balance it out with everything else that I do in life.
I love that, and one of my favorite, and I don't know, I haven't heard your work and I'd love to, but I love to quote something that Drake says, which is similar to what you just said, I think, which is everybody dies, but not everybody lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that concept of without creativity, we become robotic. And again, creativity, we all have it within us. It's a human potential, it's a human skill, but we actually have to work at it because, to your point, as we get older, we kind of lose ourselves and we lose our dreams. And especially as Black people trying to make it through this world, it's a challenge to do everything we're doing and then go, oh, let's be creative, right? And yet it is our life source. And so, Charles, what say you about why do you do it with all of the stress and trauma and drama? Why do you do what you do?
Well, shout out to everybody. Like, shout out to y'all for saying everything that you did. John, on my way over here to record, I was listening to The Harder They Fall, man, because I still got that cowboy in me. But for me, it was similar age, learning about acting, seeing acting at ETA on the South Side of Chicago, and knowing that was it. And a large part of it too for me is doing what I do. Is, like I said, getting back to shifting people's perspective of possible. My perspective has shifted for all intents and purposes, I'm not supposed to be here. I grew up with not a lot of money on the south side of Chicago, but I'm the president of the third largest local of SAG-AFTRA in Chicago. I'm a professor. I'm on TV. Like, mama, I made it, right? And
Right.
so for me to be able to do that, and for me to see that it's about mindset, and like you said, like, losing your mind, but finding your mind, really, creativity. And for me to be able to, through my work as a producer and as a professor, like, really just say to people, like, yo, find that inner young cowboy and keep going, because it's possible, and for the people who, just gets a little bit more confident, like, that's enough. Even if you don't make it all the way, like, if you can stand in your own creativity and your own truths and, like, express yourself or explore yourself, like that, if I can get one person out of each class that I teach, each person that sees one of my films or one of my plays, I've done my job. Like, I've lived up to my calling. I love that you said that, NK. Shout out to you for that.
I know. I love it. Troy, so why do you do what you do? You've gone from sports and all other kinds of things that you do that don't necessarily seem to connect, but they're connecting. Why? Why you do it? Why you do
Yeah,
this?
one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, and it just talks about the journey. So, in short, the journey. Sometimes we end up where we started, and I'm taking cue from John. Oh, back when I was 10. And, but when I was a kid, man, I grew up in a family full of clergy and community leaders. So I got a chance to see individuals leading large populations of people and seeing the positive impact that can have. And I remember as a young kid, I said, I'm going to be a minister. And whether it manifested itself in the traditional way of being a preacher or a pastor, I know that I have a ministry. I know that we all have a testimony, and this has given me the ability and the platform to do those things and live out that purpose of being a catalyst and amplifier. And I feel as though the journey in sports and other things just provided me some experiences and some transferable skills that have allowed me to apply those today, from being on stage, being a performer, just developing tactics to use to make that more effective. You just
being creative with your tactics, right?
You pick up tools over time.
Right.
But I do feel that the reason I do it is and NK, that word is it's calling. When you think about ministers, oftentimes that's the term that's used. Like, why do you want to go and talk to these folks and not going to listen to you and still go do their own thing? It's because you can't help it. It's in you. It is a calling, and that is exactly what it is. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to leverage media to achieve those goals.
So speaking of calling, go ahead, Charles. Go ahead.
Y'all, you're gonna struggle anyway. Like, for real, anything that you do is gonna be hard. Like, whether you work in a 9-to-5 that you don't care about, or you punching somebody's clock, or you making somebody else's dreams come true, or you're whatever profession, whatever job, whatever responsibilities in life, you're gonna have trauma, you're gonna have stress, you're gonna have disappointments, you're gonna have sleepless nights. So why not spend this time, whatever time that we have, doing what you love, what you're called to do, what you're excited about, makes an impact on other people.
Exactly. And our ancestors, we get the privilege to do what we do because our ancestors fought, died, did all of those things for us. And so as we wrap, my final question is always, because we are going to be ancestors one day and we want to leave a legacy. And so when we talk about and think about the children coming up, what would you say to parents to encourage them to ensure that they embed this creativity and imagination in their children in such a way that they will maintain it? Because when you get rid of the creativity and imagination, again, we become robotic And we also become even more ill because creativity really does. It's one of the highest human potentials. So what would you say, and I want each person to maybe just give a sentence or so, what would be your message to parents around keeping their kids creative and planting that seed of creativity in them that will hopefully sustain them for life? What would you say, John?
I just got back from Colombia a couple weeks ago. I took my then she was 9, but this weekend she just turned 10. I took my 10-year-old daughter to Colombia, and we went out into the mountains, and we met this village, and we met this village of people called the Palenque people, and they were once enslaved by the Spaniards, and they escaped slavery, and they went out into the mountains, and they created their own village. They created their own tribe, and the Spanish came up there and tried to bring them back to slavery, and they fought like hell to not go back. And they said eventually they said, you know what, we're gonna leave these people alone. And I traveled across the world and showed this to my daughter, and I got those wheels in her mind turning. And this won't be the last trip that I take her on. I think creativity starts with seeing the world. Creativity starts with giving them information, giving your children information. The best thing that you can leave behind to your children when you die is information. Because
A broad mind, right? A mind that is open, always like a sponge, wanting to know more.
So
I love that.
so I will say, what we should strive to leave to the next generation is more information, because with that they can do so much. They can do way more than just having a piece of
So
property.
curiosity, yes, leaving curiosity. NK, what say you? Just a sentence. Yes.
Creation is fostered by and through communication. So actively and openly communicating with your child is the space of co-creation, and anything else is possible. So more of that, because of what they have to offer in their little minds, we really allow them to speak what blow our mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So blowing mind communication, Charles.
Have yourself explore your own creativity, because when you explore your own creativity, you're setting a model for what could be done, and what's possible and what's acceptable. So just be a role model and find your own creativity.
Yes. Troy, bring us home.
Creative safe space for them to figure it out.
Absolutely. So I can't even believe this went so fast, and thank you all for an incredible conversation. Thanks again, Troy, NK, Charles, and John, the author, for being with us today. And on behalf of our sponsors, Creative Cipher, in association with Troy Pryor, Max Black Media, African American Art Alliance, and the Gary International Black Film Festival, I'm Dr. Gloria Chance with Max Black Media. We're here to maximize Black power and advancement in business, politics, health, and more. We want to thank you all for joining tonight and having this amazing conversation. And we'll see you again after we figure out what we're going to do next, right, on this topic, because it really is an important topic. It's an important growth topic for all of us, and I so appreciate having you all. Thank you.
Thank you.